That was a very short intro. We're already kind of, I mean, it's already 4 minutes after 8, and I had Grant wake up at like 3 a.m. because I fucked up the time zones. That's something that, typical Hopper would do. But I've got a great pair of guests with me. We've got the mad scientist, we've got Coach Rob, and then we also have one of my heroes from a kid, when he was battling and with Rhino, they were going back and forth. They made the KTMs look cool, and then the KTMs kind of weren't cool anymore, and then Dungy made them cool again. But anyway, here we go. Here is Grant and Coach Rob. How are you guys doing this morning?
Good, thank you.
It's great to be here. Like you said, it's nice to be a Legends. So thank you, Grant, for making the time. We know it's early for you on the West Coast for sure.
Yeah, no, that was my bad. I didn't read Johnny's text correctly. When he put 10 a.m. EST, I thought he meant like estimate, not Eastern Standard Time. So,
oh,
no, it's good. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah, I should have verified with you, dude. So let's just say that I fucked that one up for sure.
All good.
But how's the maybe a question out of left field though? How is bike sales and everything going on at your shop with how the economy's doing?
Yeah, it's okay. The main thing is it's just a little inconsistent. So we have, a couple of days where you're like, I'm the kind of person I stress a little bit about those things because, there's a lot of overheads, a lot of employees, and, you never want to let anyone down. But, you'll have maybe a couple of bad days and start getting concerned, and all of a sudden out of nowhere have this big day. So it all averages out. I mean, there's no denying that the power sport industry, as well as other industries, are struggling a little bit. I think there was the COVID hangover where everything sold during COVID, and then I think a lot of companies try to ramp up production to meet that. And as that product was arriving a couple of years back, so the demand was falling off. So every I think manufacturer's in a slightly different position. KTM's obviously in a slightly tougher one. Other brands I think have gotten through a little bit better, but I would say it's just okay. Once you've had that big wave and those big numbers for a while, it never feels good to go back down, and see things kind of regress. But it's the nature of the beast. I think overall, the sport and the power sport industry is in an okay place. And, I think once we navigate through some of these things, like you said, the economy, there's tariff concerns, there's been some delays in some production. But once they weed through that, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, interesting you say that because the small like real estate company that my brother and I run, dude, it is like hit flat because rates are just so high right now because that 10-year and everything. And so it's like, honestly, everyone is struggling. And for that, it's kind of a bummer. Sorry, Coach was trying to get my logo out from the top of your head because that's just the only place that I could put it there.
No worries, man. Got to get the logo in.
Yeah.
Thing right here.
Yes, yeah.
Baseball is not right.
Because there's been a couple shops here in Colorado that have literally been sold to either another shop or just another investor of something. So, this is interesting. With the whole MotoGP, what do you guys think about the Liberty acquisition? The guys that bought F1 in 2017 for, $8 billion, and now F1 is worth like $30 billion. Now they just bought MotoGP for 4.2, and just for context, Disney bought Star Wars for $4 billion. So I don't know. Do you think it's gonna be good?
I personally, I don't know the Liberty Group at all, like personally or anything, but there's no denying that they've taken Formula One to another level. I mean, Formula One's always been big, but it wasn't that big in the US. I felt like saying, you've got IndyCar here, you got NASCAR, you got a lot of competition, and Americans tended to follow American racing more. So I think we could argue the single biggest thing Liberty did was get the Netflix show going for Formula One, and it gave people the perspective of what is really involved. Because if you don't know the sport, you just think just a few guys going round and round, and they're good drivers, but when you realize what goes into it and what's behind it and the amount of money and the politics and everything involved, it's a great story. And I hope that they can bring that story, out of MotoGP, because I think that'll make the riders become superstars, like what's happened in Formula One. I don't agree with everything in their policies and changes and things like that, but there's no denying they've blown up Formula One, and I think they'll probably do the same with MotoGP.
Coach,
Johnny, you bring up a good
that?
point. Well, I have to concur. To Grant's point exactly, I was never into Formula One. I remember the red Schumacher car, but that was about it because it was Ferrari and I was young and red cars, fast Ferrari was cool. But to Grant's point exactly, when that Netflix show came out, my wife and I, Michaela, literally sat and watched that. And you got to know the team owners and the principals, and you got to know the sponsors, and you got to know the drivers. And then we're watching it when they were in Vegas. Yeah, to Grant's point exactly, they made a fan out of me through that. Grant, you may have more insight, and Johnny, I think you've talked about this before. Wasn't Supercross offered something similar to that and they declined it?
From what I heard, I don't know, Grant, if you've heard the same thing or not, but it was like a $5 million deal, and Feld had to come up with the money, and they said no. And so it's like Netflix is not going to pay all the money to just travel there. They want to pay their photographers and their camera equipment and whatnot. And so it's like it's an investment. But as Grant said, with F1, that worked out tremendous. Like I can't wait for the Netflix Tour de France Unhinged to come out right before the race that's happening here in a couple of days, because that's almost more entertaining to watch than the race itself.
Yeah.
And if I was just looking, the inaugural season of this deal ended up doing 700 million views, right, for their debut. That's huge.
That's
and
solid. Yeah.
I think you're right on the money, Grant, when it comes to that's what hit him over. Because truthfully, I'm just going to flat out and say it. I don't watch F1. I wait because I don't want to see what happens at the race. I want to know all the drama and everything. So I wait for the season to come out. So then I know who wins and everything. Because it's to me, it's more entertaining I don't want to say it's more of a soap opera, but maybe it's more of a soap opera. I don't know.
Hey, Grant, here's a question for you, because correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. I think you were on the short list for announcing the World Supercross. Do you think that group, since it's now owned by two billionaires who understand the power of leverage and growing something, do you think that they would jump on something like that Netflix offer? For $5 million for them doesn't seem like that'd be a big, too much to bite off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, exactly where their head's at, but I know that in their case, World Supercross has got obviously a bit of a mountain to climb. The US series, the whole thing now, the SMX is, you've got Motocross and Supercross teaming up for a powerhouse. Then you've got the GPs in Europe, and now you've got another standalone series. So they probably going to need to do something that makes them break out, and just be different and get attention that they need. So if they put up the 5 million to do that, I think it would be smart. But one of the other things they're going to need to do is get, how do I word it? More of the top guys, superstars. Having one or two, yes, sells tickets, but you're going to have to do something in the sense of maybe spending that kind of money on the riders at first to get them into the series, and then look at a show. But if they've got the money and they can do it all at once, could be an interesting move for those guys.
With all of your experience, both as a professional racer, world champion, you've got all the boxes checked off, and then transferring it over today's modern dollar amount. Let's say they went out and got 5 guys. I'm just thinking randomly, one per bike color, right? What would be the tipping point? And I know this is just a shooting from the hip. What would you guess the tipping point would be for World Supercross to be able to get 5 guys committed per rider?
If you're looking at top guys, obviously there's 5 rounds to the series. So to me, it doesn't make sense to pay a guy to come for 1 round and then pay another guy to go to another round. You really need, like you said, at least 5 guys. So, to me, I think that budget would be about 5 million to get 5 top guys to go to 5 rounds.
And that's the thing that I think is so interesting is we know that these two guys, if you go back and you look at these two young billionaires, they've invested in soccer teams. You guys refer to it as football. They've taken teams from essentially obscurity into primetime. So for me, the dollar amounts on what we're looking at do seem a tad bit minuscule compared to what they're paying for these teams, especially Grant. I don't know how many people are on a football team, a European football team.
11, and then obviously you got your backups.
So what do you think that team roster is costing just to salary one team of 11 studs and, like, say, 11 backups?
Well, it does vary a fair bit. There's some mediocre sized teams where, maybe they're spending a grand total of 100 million in salaries. But then when you look at like your Manchester Uniteds, Manchester City, Liverpool, some of these big teams, I mean, they're spending well over $1 billion in salaries. So there is still a pretty big variance. If you really go break it down, like a lot of times when they show you the top earning athletes in the world, ironically, you'll see usually someone like Lewis Hamilton in the top 10. You'll see like Messi, Ronaldo, the soccer players in the top 10. And then, sometimes you get your players like, I know he deferred a lot of his payments, but like Shohei Ohtani or LeBron James, they're up there. So it is split up. But again, I think it's a little bit like motocross. There's guys making millions and there's guys spending hundreds of thousands to go racing. So the spectrum is very wide, and that goes for most sports. Even like MotoGP. There's some guys on the grid that are only getting paid a few $100,000. But then you got guys like Marquez getting tens of millions. So like most sports, the superstars get the big paychecks. And then I think there's some guys you don't realize how much they make. And because also it's not just their salary, it's their endorsements, their sponsors, being paid to go to, events or launches or whatever it may be. And then, again, you've got guys barely making it. So it's interesting. It's not like getting a corporate job where if you're a CFO of a certain company, it pays in this window. In sports in general, there's a huge variance from top to bottom.
When I was looking it up, like Messi was making like 300 million, but I think that was just from the team. That wasn't in dealing with all the endorsements and everything. And then there was other, like you said, soccer players that were making just like 100 grand. And then talking with some of the road race guys that have gone overseas, they were saying that some of their deals for like MX2 were 50 grand a year. And then they ended up not even getting paid. Like it was like a promise. And then they do 4 rounds and then they get fired and no pay whatsoever, which is, I don't know. I mean, it's the same old thing. I guess
it happens everywhere. I mean, it's not just in Europe. I've seen it happen in the US as well. And it was probably an Italian team that guy signed for because they've been known to not pay their bills sometimes.
I just hope that KTM is going to be able to pay Tomac for whatever in the world that he is charging those guys, because we want to see Tomac.
I know they get a lot of help from Red Bull, so I don't know the split, but KTM is really lucky to have another Austrian company behind them. Those two companies are like a marriage. So, and the thing was, even through all their financial woes, their racing programs were kind of taken out of the business model and have been protected. I don't know the exact status and how long that goes for, but I'm pretty confident. I've never known KTM to not pay their athletes. I know there were some issues with employees and when they had that sort of
restructuring.
Yeah, that restructuring where it seemed like everything was on pause for a while. And I've heard a variety of stories. I heard people got their back pay sorted out. I've heard, I know they did lose some good employees, people that were nervous or had opportunities to go elsewhere. So hopefully that didn't hurt them too much, because a lot of times that's where, people talk about the money and the image, but if you lose really smart people, that's actually the biggest problem, in my opinion.
Hey, Grant, I have a question for you, and I don't know if you're at liberty to talk about it or not, but Troy Lee was on David Pingray's Whiskey Throttle, and they were saying, Troy mentioned that he got an extension with Red Bull to do some collaborations on the gear, obviously tied in with TLD. Do you think that there'll start to become a power struggle? Let's say Ducati gets on fire. Do you see that Red Bull making an executive decision to stay between KTM and Ducati, or is that so deeply entrenched it won't be an issue?
I don't think it would be an issue at the end of the day. They're trying to promote their brand, and they're going to go with, one thing about Troy, he's been, good at promoting his brand and using the right people as well, to build this kind of legacy where he's known as one of the best creators and designers and painters of the industry. I think that there's probably more of a sort of issue with Ducati has a very good relationship with Monster Energy. So I don't know if they are able to separate that with their moto racing program. Because obviously, if you look at MotoGP and some of the other series that they're involved in, that's a relationship that seems to have gone from strength to strength. In fact, when Marc Marquez went to Ducati, he had to give up his Red Bull deal, which was worth a lot of money because of the fact that Ducati is has a team deal with Monster.
And that's what I was curious about, because if you look at Caroli's bike, he's got Monster underneath the seat. But yet when you listen to Troy, it sounds like Troy's doing a TLD, Red Bull, Ducati. And I was like, I wonder how that will work. It's like, Johnny, you've talked a lot about it in your analysis shows about Tomac leaving that relationship with Monster. That's going to be significant, to go over to Red Bull. I have no idea, Grant. And again, if you're not comfortable talking about the numbers, but I've got to assume that's a significant cash loss or had to be offset at some level for sure to give up Monster for Tomac personally.
Yeah. Tomac's also at a position in his career where, he's in a different position as other people. Like one of them is he doesn't, in my opinion, he doesn't need the money. I think he wants to go racing because he's still obviously competitive, which is quite remarkable. One, for his age, and two, some of the injuries he's been through. Even I've questioned, can we see the old Eli? And then you go watch, some of the earlier rounds of pro motocross, and I'm going, yep, he still got it. Like, I can't believe I even wrote him off a little bit or thought maybe he couldn't. So he's now in a position where he could walk away and be fine, and he would still be solidified as an absolute legend of the sport and will be in the Hall of Fame. But I don't think that's his operation. He strikes me as someone that if he's committed and he believes he can still be competitive and go for race wins, it seems like he genuinely loves racing. So if it is taking a bit of a haircut as far as the pay goes, I don't think that's his number one priority. I think he's probably more concerned about things like, can I adapt to a KTM at this point in my career when I've been so used to the Japanese bikes? KTM is definitely, we all know this, but the only one with the steel frame. It just works different. It's just different, especially to the Yamaha, which has got a lot of power and is pretty rigid, which I think suits Eli's style. The KTM's got a little more of a loose, the frames flex more. It's just different, from when you sit on a KTM, it feels different to a Japanese bike. So Eli's proven that he's been able to do it on a Honda, on a Cowie, on a Yamaha. So I'm not going to bet against him. That's for sure.
Do you think that,
go ahead, Johnny, excuse me.
Sorry. Do you think that steel frame, guys, is going to mess up his beast mode antics of just being WFO everywhere because it's flexing more? Because you'd think somebody like, I guess if you're looking at stuff from like a data standpoint, the faster you go, usually the stiffer you need stuff, right? Just for stability wise. And you usually lengthen out the bike. But for a rider like Eli that is always just wide open, if that bike is flexing more, I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's kind of where I would definitely agree with what you're saying. But it's also been proven that, obviously it can win. Riders have won in it. I've seen Chase at times look like he's really attacking. And again, there might be a slight change. Eli might have to adapt a little bit, right? Whether it's suspension settings, clamps, like you said, the overall length of the bike. But the frame, there's not much you can do to change that. So I don't know if that's going to be that one little missing link that holds them back a little bit. But I guess it seems like we'll find out shortly.
Grant, excuse me, Grant, what do you think is going to be more difficult, adjusting to the frame or adjusting to the hydraulic clutch?
That's a good one. I mean, I know he's said before he's not a fan of the hydraulic clutch, but I mean, there's a part of me that goes, I get it. But that's one thing I do think KTM's always had, at least for a while, is a good clutch. Like, it's very, how do I word it? It's very user friendly, and it's very consistent. And I think that's something Eli can get used to pretty quickly. I still think the frame is going to be the sort of question mark. Is he able to overcome or adapt? I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think that frame has its pros, and then sometimes maybe its cons. The pros are like, really choppy, square edge, bumpy tracks, almost a little bit like the GP tracks in Europe. I think suit the KTMs. But with the way the tracks evolve here and the way Eli rides, it's going to take a little bit of time. And but again, I think he can. I mean, look at Chase. He left Honda and went to KTM. We were all curious, and even though they've been still chasing some setup and continuously working and evolving, he's proven that he can win on a KTM as well. So I think good riders are able to adapt. The difference is for Eli, he's later in his career, so he's very set in his ways, like most riders would be. So the big question mark is going to be, will he be able to figure it out, and how long is it going to take? He doesn't have
You bring up a really good point on how well Sexton was able to adapt going from HRC to KTM. And, besides kind of shaking down some of the stink bugs that Webb tried to fix, it was amazing. Once they got that dialed, I mean, it looked like he'd ridden that KTM his whole life. So I do agree with you. He made it doable for sure.
Grant and Coach, last follow-up question. Have we seen beast mode in motocross so far? This year.
Hold on. I'm drawing a blank. Which race did he? The moto that he won, was that Hangtown?
Yeah.
That was one. He rides well there, and I saw. Maybe it wasn't 100% beast mode, but it was definitely 90-95% beast mode. We've been talking, how good Jet is, but he beat him straight up. So.
But he started in front of him, though. He started in front of him.
But he was still lapping faster. He pulled a gap. He was going. Again, I've seen glimpses of it. And again, he got a better start. That's Jet's fault for being behind, right? At the end of the day, no one looks at who got the whole shot and who had the fastest lap time. They just look at the results. So we've seen glimpses of it. But even like on the weekend at Southwick, I thought maybe we would see that again, and it didn't quite seem to materialize.
Coach, your opinion.
I have to follow right up with what Grant said. Southwick to me was where the tipping scales went the other direction, because we just know how well Tomac rides at that. I mean, just watching him almost get his front wheel sawed off by Hunter, I don't know. I agree with Grant. It's like we've seen it, but I thought if we were really going to see it in two motos, regardless of starts, because Tomac's come from, some pretty big deficits, and he just rails that track like it's nobody's other. And to Grant's point, I mean, Jet just simply walked away consistently, both motos. I mean, I think you have to say that, we did see, to Grant's point, if we have seen glimpses of it, it's not going to be enough to surpass Jet, unfortunately, moving forward. And if Jet's gotten his starts figured out, which it looked like he did after this weekend, I just remember when they were talking about Jet getting comfortable with the bike, and he says, we're finally at the point where I'm comfortable with the bike where I can actually start training on it instead of still working on setup. You're like, oh, shoot. You know, if he was barely losing and he wasn't comfortable with the bike, now he's got the bike balanced, he's got his starts back. I think what we saw this weekend might be kind of a premonition of what we might see the rest of the summer. It's pretty hard to argue with it after, again, knowing how strong Tomac is at Southwick. Yeah, it's next level for sure. It will be interesting to see what the next couple of weeks look like if there's a momentum shift back the other direction. So, Johnny,
Well,
go ahead, Grant, excuse me.
No, I was just going to add to your one point there, which was, for riders sometimes chasing a setup or getting comfortable. The other thing is that people don't talk a whole lot about is, like, if Jet's got to a point where he's comfortable, that means he's in the window of where he needs to be. So now, instead of throwing a bunch of different things at it to see what works, you get into that window, and then it's just small tweaks here and there. But what is, I believe, also very important for riders is consistency. So now that he's found a setup and he can train on it, even if the bike's not perfect, the one thing that helps your confidence and your inner ability is, let's just say, it deflects on certain braking bumps or things. You can move your body, you can soak it up, you can do different things. But what's most important is being able to ride on a bike that is the same week after week after week. And that's also going to bring, I think, a little more speed and consistency, which is kind of scary for the rest of the guys. Not to mention that, going back to Hangtown, yes, Eli won, but it was hot, and Jet's actually very mature for his age. He, I don't want to say gave up, but he figured, all right, they got me on this one. I'll save my energy and I'll make sure I come out and win that second moto and hopefully get the overall. So, he hasn't been pushed, in my opinion, over his limit. He rides within his limit. You see sometimes, they're hanging with him, he can't pull away, and then he just slowly starts marching away and again wins by a nice comfortable gap.
See, that's the point that I kind of go on with beast mode is when I look at the lap times, it's not that like all of a sudden you see Tomac go from a 205 to a 201. It's more so that he goes from a 205 to a 205 after the track is still rough and rutted and it's 25 minutes in, where everyone else is at like a 208. He's still at a 205. That's beast mode, the definition from me. When I look at Jet goes 205, and then if somebody gets close to him, like you were saying, Grant, then he goes 203 all of a sudden. And then it's only for like a lap or two. Then he gets that gap again and then plays a little cat and mouse game all over again.
That to me is the biggest maturity that I've seen this year with Jet. He doesn't care to win by 35 seconds. Hey, Johnny, pull your microphone a little bit closer. That's the thing that I noticed with Jet, to Grant's point. If he sees somebody coming, he just bumps it up a little bit, does a second, then hangs out there. Somebody bridges, he goes again, but he's not trying to win by 30 minutes. And I think it goes back to, like what Tim Ferry said, Johnny, on the show, he's trying to manage a 10-month series. And Grant, I'm on public record of saying this. In your prime, I cannot imagine you're being told in November, hey, guess what? We're going to combine series. We're going to race from January to October. Along the line, you got to shake down a new bike. Thanks for showing up and racing designations, and we need you to be strong for 10 months. You're screwed 6 ways sideways. With my young athletes that I have right now, if World Supercross does not go the distance, I'm training them for 10 months of racing. Yeah. Right? I've got young athletes that I can athletically develop to be ready to try to sustain 10 months of output. For you guys that excuse me, never having, a back-to-back series with such few days off, I don't know how these guys can even continue to do it. We could joke a little bit about how they're doing it, and that's not what we need to talk about, but it is amazing the way that these guys are having to adapt and overcome. Grant, with all your experience and with the teams that you changed and stuff, in your opinion, what would you recommend to Tomac, knowing that he's going to go to a bike that's completely different, as you've already articulated, and you have such a short window of time before A1?
The one thing I would say, which, again, he's done so much, he doesn't need to be told a whole lot. The biggest thing I would say is, a lot of times riders, and I'm guilty myself, you switch teams and you go, I like this and I like that, and I've always wanted my setup like this. Be open-minded, because this is a pretty big change, and they might suggest things to try that in his head he's going to go, no, I don't like that, or I don't like a longer swing arm, or I don't like the forks pulled in tight. But when you're changing, the chassis, the core, the base, and everything gets added onto it, just be open-minded. I think he's going to have to take some advice from the team itself and try things that maybe he would already think, I'm not going to like this, but he might be shocked and go, well, hang on, all of a sudden I do like this. It does work on this bike. So it's just going to be, taking the blinders off, however you want to word it, but being open-minded to try things that maybe he's tried in the past, didn't like, could do full circle.
I think it'll be interesting if all of a sudden he just loves the hydraulic clutch and then just becomes whole shot Hansen overnight and is like, damn, why did I wait so long to go to hydraulic? This thing's awesome.
And it could happen,
Yeah.
And again, for me, I like the hydraulic clutch. It makes it nice and easy. But then again, my style of riding was not like Eli's. He's very hard on the clutch, which actually makes me think you would think he would like the hydraulic clutch for how much he uses it and how much you have to get the free play out. But again, riders get set in their ways, and we don't like change sometimes, but sometimes those changes you're forced to do. And you, Rob, I think there's a good chance he goes, well, you know what, I was wrong, I like this.
Yeah,
usually changes ends up being good in some form of another. Maybe not initially, but in the long run it does. Switching gears just a little bit, Coach, what were you wanting to finish off?
I was just going to say, with Carlos over there at KTM, I still think he's one of the best mechanics. I don't know what his role is now. I think he's team manager. I can't figure out what Roger, Ian, and Carlos, because they all do so much. But, I love Carlos. I got a chance to meet him when I was working with Dunge, and I've never seen a mechanic who just listens so much. And to what Grant's saying there, coming over thinking this is what you want, I think if there's anybody that's going to be able to help make Tomac comfortable, it'll definitely be Carlos. Sorry, Johnny, go ahead, bud.
No, I mean, you have a good point, and Grant kind of briefed on it too. Like, I think that's why we're going to see Tomac on a KTM rather than a Ducati, is because he's wanting to go to a team that's established, that knows how to win. He doesn't want to build a team. But switching gears, well, he just doesn't have enough time. He wants to show up and finish his career on top, because there's been so many guys that have retired on top, and then there's been other guys that didn't. With Jet and Degan right now, it looks as if those guys are riding like 80% to win. And I would say I give more credit to Jet at the moment, because his field is still super stacked. And nothing against the 250 class, it just doesn't seem like there's anyone close to Degan. And what you were saying, Coach, as far as going through, we're round 22 of 33. For just, if you can stay at 80% every weekend, you're in zone 4, zone 3, while other guys behind you are zone 5, man, that's going to take a toll. So it just becomes progressively bigger and bigger. So then when we're talking about beast mode, we're like, dude, we need beast mode ×2. We need healthy beast mode to beat Jet, because Jet's been just rolling around out front. He's completely ready for an attack. But what are your guys' thoughts on that? Go for it, Grant. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, you guys bring up a good point, which is obviously from just the physical standpoint. Obviously, Coach, you have your planning, your programming to build, riders to, one, be strong, fit, but also to sustain that, like you said, for basically 10 months now. Yeah. And I agree with what Johnny was saying, and you would probably agree, which is, if you're not going over your limit or pushing the limit each and every weekend, the 10-month series is doable. But when you're almost burning out and because the other thing is when you're going 100% or go into that level 5, that's when crashes or injuries, or you dab your foot and tweak your knee, or and then those things set you back. To me, I think obviously Jet is fortunate that with his talent, he's only going as fast as he needs to, and it's kind of scary for the other guys, because we've seen it at times. We've seen AP be able to battle him, and I'm talking motocross and supercross, Webb or, Sexton and Tomac. They've all had a chance. They've all maybe passed him or beat him in a moto or a heat race or a main event. But like I said, with Jet, you can just almost feel that in the confidence. He's like, I don't have to win every battle. I'm just here to win the war. And right now he's dominating the war.
Yeah. Well said, Coach.
Yeah, this is a crazy one. If you're looking at what Jet is essentially managing out there, it's amazing when you see him take his helmet off. Like Grant was saying earlier, he kind of tunes it down a little bit. The last couple laps, he's already in conservation mode for that second moto. Waste no time in between motos, because as we say, once the race is over, you're going right into recovery mode. Johnny, if we're going back to your original question about what do we think is going to happen between Degan and, Racing Jet, I want to kind of change the question if you're okay with it. Obviously, it's your show. I still think, and Grant, you tell me, you've got more inside scoop, Johnny. Why would Degan wait to go 450 outdoors? Why would he not? He sees the opportunity. Why would he not go 450 Supercross? It's not like the bonus for him, titles, numbers. He's already got all those.
Okay,
why do you think he wouldn't go 450 Supercross?
He is so far ahead in the points lead right now. He could wrap it up and race Ironman probably on the 450. Do you think we'd see him hop on a 450 for the last round to just for giggles? Because there's already a debate. It was at the end of sorry, I'm adding on to your question. At the end of Southwick, you had Jet stick out his tongue, show his watch, show his chain. And then in the comments, Degan got involved saying like, hey, I'm already in his head, so there's already this dynamic growing. So
it's interesting. They're both alphas, that's for sure. And I think it's going to be exciting, but Coach, to your point about why not just go 450 Supercross, I think a couple things. One, maybe he rides the East Coast, so he gets a chance to go west, east, back to back. That doesn't happen very often.
Right.
As well as a slower introduction into Supercross. I don't think, and I could be totally wrong on this one, I'm just speculating. I don't think you see Degan on a 450 at Ironman, even if he could. And the reason I say that is he wants to come into that class prepared, ready. He's not there to show up and just see where he fits in. Strikes me as someone that's going to dominate this series and be fully committed next year. And he's gonna be going after Jet. It's going to be fun to watch, especially to see how he transitions to that 450, because we have seen in the past some riders tend to actually do a little bit better on a 450, but a lot of guys move up. They want to win, and then they have a couple of crashes. It knocks their confidence a little bit, and then they get stuck in a funk. And we've seen that with many a rider over the years. But at the moment, there's no one that can touch Degan in the 250 class. There's a lot of good riders, and maybe this comment offends some people, but besides Degan, there's no superstars. There's no future legends that I see, and I'm not trying to put anyone down. I just think Degan is that good. And there's no one, like to your guys' point, really that good. There's talent coming up. I think like Cole Davies has shown that he's got something special for sure. Just naturally gifted, young, learning fast. So I could see him being someone that evolves into maybe the next superstar. But right now you've got good riders, but you look around, there's a lot of inconsistency and crashing, and one moto's good, one moto's bad. And there's one common denominator. It's Degan, number one out front. Even if he has to make a few passes, and even with him, he's not pushing 100% either. He's in a similar position with Jet, that he's going as fast as he needs to. So now what I'm curious is, when they go from 80%, like let's just say next year Degan moves up, now he's wanting to beat Jet really, really bad, and he's going at 100%. When they're both on their limits, it might not always be who's going to be the fastest on that weekend, but just putting together results week after week. We saw in Supercross, even like with Cooper Webb, he didn't win the most races, but damn, that guy gets every last point, whether it was a second or a third. And you looked at the other guys, and they made the bigger mistakes. And at the end of the day, Coop came out on top, and he probably wasn't the fastest guy.
No, and like at the mud race, he went from like 8th to 3rd at like the last lap.
Yep, to Grant's point, exactly. Though he doesn't stop racing till the finish line.
No.
One thing that I'd be curious about, and Grant, you hit on something really big. We heard a lot about it early in the season, and that was that Cole Davies was the fastest guy at Star Yamaha on a 250. And you could just kind of see that confidence ooze out of Cole when he went there on Saturday. He never panicked. Good start, bad start. He got great starts, but he was always just so the athletic poise that he showed was like next level. I'd be very, very curious to see what the difference was between the 450 riders on Supercross against Degan. I'd be very curious to see what that disparity is. Of course, we know the 450s are going to be faster, but as you know, Grant, a lot of times on some tracks, the 250s can actually be faster. But I wonder what that disparity is. Is it like a double digit, or I wouldn't assume so, but then how tight is it actually? Because you hear that all the time. Well, Cole at the racetrack is the fastest. Because the reason why I asked that is you look at that Star Yamaha team, right? We don't have Max Anstey. He would have been a contender, especially outdoors. We don't have Pierce Brown. You look at the people, Cole Davies, to your point, those are to me, the 3 or 4 extra guys that we could put in there. If McAdoo could stay healthy, we know he can, particularly in Supercross, can go fast. But like you say, nobody really to push Degan. I still have to give him a shout out, though. I don't know what it is with him in this Hangtown track, that opening lap, when they drop into that right-hander and he hits that single and is freaking pancake flat.
Oh, Southwick.
Oh, Southwick, excuse me. My goodness. I mean, it gives me goosebumps every time you watch him do it, because last year he was hanging on that ragged edge. This time he just like, I'll just do it because I can. Just it's like, damn, son, that was just beautiful.
I'm just interjecting here. So sorry, guys.
Go for it.
I want to know, okay, from Coach and Grant, let's just hypothetically, because I like that word, say that Jet and Degan are 100% and they're riding 100% and maybe even potentially over their head. Who goes down first? Who can ride the ragged edge better on a 450 when they're face to face?
That is the $1 million question, isn't it? Literally, because whoever doesn't go down wins the championship and gets the $1 million. If you go look at the very early days of Jet, let's just say when it was Geico Honda, he did have some crashes. He did ride a little bit on the edge. I remember at Anaheim when Ferrandis caught him up and he crashed in the whoops. But I also don't believe you hold that over someone's head. Everyone's made some rookie mistakes. When you watch him now, he looks like probably the most in control rider, like with his style and his finesse. The only other person that kind of reminded me of was Stefan Everts. And, because when I went to Europe, I actually, the team I rode for, Harry Everts was the team manager. So I actually got to ride with Stefan. And it was a big eye opener because I remember a couple of times watching him and I'm like, he doesn't look that fast. And you grab a stopwatch and you're like, how the hell is he doing that lap time? Like it didn't make sense. I couldn't wrap my brain around watching him and then seeing the results. And I feel a little bit the same with Jet. But then you look at Degan's style, it is loose. It is a little more sideways, a little bit off the bike, which is not saying it's a bad thing, because that's also been a little bit Tomac style too. So there are different ways to get it done. I've often used this analogy. I watched Stefan Everts ride, and he would stand through entire corners in the ruts and was fast as could be. Then obviously when I came to the US, Ricky was the guy to beat in motocross, and I watch him and I'm going, that's not how you're supposed to do it. He just sat down, just grabbed a handful of throttle and a handful of clutch through the roughest line. And, I'm like, no, he's not even trying to avoid the bumps. He's just smashing them, and two completely different techniques and on opposite side of the spectrum, but they both worked. Both those guys were phenomenal athletes. So I don't believe there's one way to ride a motorcycle these days. Yes, you try to do certain fundamental things that make you a better rider, but it's like in anything. Everyone, Formula One, you hear about drivers saying, I can't get this car to work for me, but my teammate is not having an issue like I am. And everyone's like, well, you're in the same car. Yeah, well, that car was built a certain way, and it might suit your style, but not your style. And, again, it gets a little complex sometimes, but I am curious to see when they get pushed to their limit or beyond, who cracks. Sometimes the most smoothest riders in the world have the biggest of crashes, and the other guys that look like they're going to crash all the time don't really crash. So
that's an interesting
point.
One. Yeah, because Degan definitely rides more on edge, I would say, than Jet does. So like just from that standpoint, I would lean towards Degan not crashing and Jet crashing if he's pushed to the edge. But I don't know.
It'll be fun. I will say it's going to be fun because, back to your point a little bit earlier, Johnny, I think the mind game's already starting. And I think if, for motocross fans, this is good. That's what we've always wanted. And everyone talks about the 90s and the 80s, the 90s, the good old days, but there were rivalries. There were guys that weren't afraid to talk a little smack about their competitor on the podium, like right in front of their face. There was no social media to take
it out of context.
Yes. So you could, on the podium, it's like, hey, how do you feel to win? Yeah, it was great. I'm just glad I kicked his ass again. And and then I think, at the end of the day, it's what people want. We want rivalries. I think it's cool. You've got, when you look at the series, it's very international as well. You've got obviously the Australians, you've got the Europeans, the Americans, even several South Americans, South Africans. So you've got eyes on the sport all around the world. They were before, but I think it's got to another level. In Europe, when I moved over, I felt like they did track what was happening over here. But now, with digital media and you can watch anything, everything, a podcast, highlights on YouTube, whatever, everyone knows what everyone's doing. And so there's a lot of eyes on the sport, especially from an international standpoint. And, again, the rivalries just help keep people engaged. So, to me, it's good if you're a fan.
Yeah.
Hey, Johnny, something to keep in mind. Degan was racing at Loretta's 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That's the part that's still dumbfounding, because I agree with Grant 100%. I think we're going to see what we saw with Chase and with Tomac outdoors, where those two were 45 seconds ahead of everybody because they were just battling and beating the shit out of each other. But it was whoever could force, it's kind of the Ricky James era, whoever could force the other one into a mistake was pretty much going to win. Like Grant said, it's not the fastest guy who wins on race day, but the one who makes the least amount of mistakes. When you go back to the athletic maturity of both Jet and Degan, neither one of them. Remember last summer, Degan did the helicopter? Remember when Jet decided to try to jump a jump that didn't exist downhill? We don't see that this year from either one of them. Athletic maturity a year later.
Well, I think they're only like a year apart too.
Yeah.
Well, Degan's 19 and I think
Jet might be 21.
20 or 21. But to your point, well, and like all the statistics keep saying, Degan right now is trending in front of Jet's accomplishments, which is pretty damn dumbfounding when you think about what Jet has done.
To be honest, I didn't think. I thought there was more of the Mike Alessi hype going with Degan And then he quickly proved myself and so many people wrong.
But are you wrong? And I say this very politely. Are you really wrong when his first futures race, he got like third and looked like he couldn't ride a bike?
Fourth. Yeah.
Fourth and looked like he couldn't ride a bike. And then the next week he's on a full factory and freaking just kills it. I mean, he has proven, whether you give it to Hayden himself and or with Brian and you put that dynamic duo together, they have made everybody eat crow. So you can't say that you were wrong. They just have, I mean, flat out stepped up. And I have to give Degan props. The kid does not crack under pressure. You could argue he grew up with a camera in his face and all that, but just because you grew up in it doesn't mean you can excel in it. Say it again, Johnny. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he has flexed that muscle so much to where he's just on another level compared to everyone else. So if he can't beat Jet straight up, he can beat him
in 4 years. Look at that.
But his mind games are just so exponentially better than the rest of the people. Because if we think about the average motocross athlete nowadays, you're homeschooled, you're only around a few people during the week with your trainer and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, you go to the races. There's not a whole lot of bullying antics or anything that they have to deal with. And so then when you're exposed to it, it's like, how do you take this on? And here in closing, I want to ask you guys both about Prado. I've kind of shared my view on Prado, but I want to hear Grant first as far as rider, bike. Is he mentally homesick? Like what the hell is going on with him? Has he figured it out? And then Coach, I'll let you piggyback off of.
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. I feel, and I think, you know, so do most people, that it's been a bit of a disappointment. I've watched him enough in GPs where you could tell he was dialed in, very comfortable. You watch him, it was like he was on rails. He could miss every little bump that he needed to, staying low on the jumps, crazy corner speed. And then you come to Supercross, because that would have been the first thing he trained for when he got to the US. And I went through a little bit of this myself, so I'm not saying it's what happened to him, but you have this European sort of technique per se, which is usually really good corner speed and roll speed. Then you get to Supercross, and now you're going to the track and you're sliding the rear around to exit the turn for the whoops to go down the right-hand side or the left-hand side. And, you know, you're so focused on Supercross, and then it dawns on you, you're like, well, I mean, I've lost all my corner speed. I'm sliding in, pivoting, and dropping out. And I don't think that's his technique or his style in general. So I almost feel like, yes, he worked hard to be competitive in Supercross, but he should also throw in some motocross training, even if it was 1 day a week or 1 day every other week during that season, to keep him sharp and, you know, what made him. The other thing that I thought was strange, and you know, it's just what I've heard, but you know, that Kawasaki like didn't want to give him a scoop tire because he wasn't ready for a good start. I don't know who the hell's making those decisions, but that's got to be one of the dumbest things I've heard, because he needs to be up front. He needs to get used to the intensity. He needs to be around these guys. That's the only way you're gonna figure it out. You know, there's no point laying in, you know, on the first step of the swimming pool. Toss him in the deep end. You know, he will figure it out. He will float. He'll get to the top. So I don't know what the dynamics like in the team, but I don't think they're helping him very much either. You know, he said he needs more power, and if they genuinely did not give him a certain tire that would give him a good start, I don't know. It's a little mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about all the stories that we've heard at Cowie, whether it was Tomac leaving for his reasons, and now it just seems like here we sit with a new rider and one of the top guys, and we hear a lot of scuttlebutt about not being happy with the bike, power output, et cetera, et cetera. To your point, Grant, exactly. It's like if that's kind of the mindset underneath the tent, I think it kind of surmises the entire situation. And it was great to see Prado, you know, at Southwick racing the way we know he's capable of. The one thing that I do find a little bit interesting is how he managed to go down in both motos on a track that type of dirt, sand really fit his riding style. So what do you think, Johnny? Do you think he bounces back this next weekend? Because that was definitely his preferred track of choice.
I think it's a move in the right direction. I'm going to be bummed if I see him outside the top 10 again. Right. He was 2 seconds a lap faster in the second qualifying when the track was the roughest. Yeah, he was like third overall because the fastest qualifying came from the A practice, which makes sense, especially on a track like that. But I think that it's been more of a bike issue setup deal for him because, he's a multi-world champion. Like the dude knows moto. And like typically my perspective is that the Europeans right now have the Americans number when it comes to moto because they do moto every day for the entire year, where here in America these guys focus primarily on what is the breadwinner, which is Supercross. So motocross is an afterthought. So just by the compound effect, the Europeans over time are just going to compound to be better motocross guys. And I think some of the tracks here don't suit his style as much because he's used to just some gnarly, hard pack, crazy deep ruts where you do have to be pretty smooth. And out here, it doesn't get as rough, which is crazy to say because whenever I go to the Nationals and I look at how rough those tracks get, I'm just mind blown that they're riding this. And then for Prado to say that it's not that bad, it's a compound deal. And then I also do have to say that, like, hey, it's new team. He's not with his family. He's not going back home overseas every 2 weeks or so. Like, there's got to be a little bit of homesickness there, especially when you're not performing well.
Yeah.
Right. So I say it's a little bit of mental, but primarily a bike deal for him. And so he's got to get out of his own way, number one. And I think Southwick was a start for him to get out of his own way to build on the confidence a bit to where he feels like, oh yeah, I can podium. And then it just kind of compounds from there. But I don't think we've seen not even a half of what Prado's actually worth. So that's
so Johnny, excuse me, based on what Grant said, does he get a paddle tire this weekend or a scoop tire?
He should fucking get a paddle tire. Like, that goddamn tire almost should be illegal. Like, talking to the road racing guys, literally Dunlop says, hey, you can only have this tire for this track, and they put stickers on the tires. And so if you have a different compound, you're disqualified. Truthfully, like, that paddle tire is, nobody's running anything else. When I talked to Degan, he's like, yeah, I'm fucking running it at dry ass high point, and in SMX, I'm going to ride it no matter what. And you're going, but this tire was designed for Southwick, but yet everyone is running it on dry, hard pack, blue groove stuff, which makes no sense to me. And him inhibiting himself and the team inhibiting him from having the best equipment out there is just ludicrous.
Hey, Johnny, can I ask Grant a controversial question?
Yeah.
Starting greats, keep them or get rid of them?
Get rid of them.
Thank you.
I don't like it. And I hate to go, back in the day, but it's motocross.
Yep.
To me, the starting blocks are getting out of control. Even if you look at like Formula One and now MotoGP, they're taking away a lot of the aero winglets and the ride height device, which makes the bike squat so they don't wheelie or wheel spin. As technology's evolved, it's become more about the motorcycle or the car than it was the rider. I genuinely love watching guys prep their gates in different ways. There's some guys that pack the dirt in, so they have a very shallow rut. Some guys just clean it out, and they, it's almost like they jump over the gate.
Yeah,
that brings more to one, getting good gate picks. Sometimes now you look, because of the great, you could almost go through the LCQ at Supercross and still get the whole shot, which I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to do, but it's got to favor the guys that qualify up front or have the fastest time or something. And And before it wasn't just what's the best angle to the first turn. You were like, oh, well, this rut is got a big hook in it. No, I'll go to the next one, or so there's more thought, more strategy, and it's just motocross. So again, I'm not saying I can't stand it, and
Sure,
but I don't like it. I'd like to see motocross how it's always been.
Good point. Good
Yeah.
point.
I mean, when you've got 41 guys elbow to elbow, grip to grip, darn near all the way to the first turn, it's carnage is going to ensue, and we continue to see it. But everybody's like, "Oh, that's just the way it is," and I'm like, "No, it's not the way it needs to be or could be." Like,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I'll end with this. Like, talking with some of the road race guys, they 1000% said that you could be the baddest motherfucker on a road race bike, but if you don't have a good datas guys, you're not even going to be inside the top 5. No way in hell. They said that it's primarily motorcycle and less about the rider, which is a bummer. But to Grant's point, that's kind of where we're heading here with all the crazy stuff that we're seeing. But hey, guys, we're right at that hour mark. So I appreciate every single one of you two-wheel SOBs that joined us this morning. Make sure you share this content and you give a like. And maybe if you even feel like it, hit that subscribe button. But I want to thank Grant for showing up bright and early. I've got a coffee here, and he did it. So I want to thank you so much, and always, Coach. I love your insight. Can't do it without you.
Hey, Grant, quick question for you. Where's how far is Benny's from the dealership? I've been to the dealership, but I haven't been to Benny's yet.
It's about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And my house is almost in between the two spots. Little off the beaten path, but yeah, I end up going to both quite a lot. So
What's Benny's?
That's his new sandwich shop that he purchased.
Oh, hell yeah.
I've been fortunate enough to be at the Langston dealership. It's unbelievable if you haven't been, but I've not been to Benny's, so I wanted to ask Grant where it's at. So when we go out next time, I'm going to pay a visit. Got to come to the shop.
Yeah, we have
second shop.
We have some loyal followers over there. I know, like Don Maeda is one of them, and
there you go.
The kids come with their parents, so I do get a lot of support from the moto community, like especially on the weekends. Right around 1 o'clock when they've left the track, it gets busy, and they all come in, and everyone's wearing moto attire, and it's
nice. Good. Well, I'm glad to see the moto community supporting it. That's awesome.
If you guys are in that area, make sure you head up Benny's. Right?
Absolutely.
Is any of your sandwiches are named after moto stuff at all, or no?
No, I took it over from Benny. I used to go there just because I love their sandwiches, and then he convinced me somehow to buy the place. And it was a little left field for me, but I did it so I could have free sandwiches for the rest of my life. I'm a sandwich guy, but the only one I left the menu kind of the same. The only thing I added is we call it the manwich. So it's just comes with turkey, ham, roast beef, bacon, avocado. It has everything on it. So we call it the manwich. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds.
We need to get out there, Johnny. That sounds pretty good.
I know, dude. That I haven't been able to eat a whole lot of sandwiches because my wife's pregnant, and so there's something about like listeria or something with you can't have dairy meat with being pregnant. I don't know, some rule. So as soon as I have my son, first thing I'm giving her is a pay and like a Dr. Pepper. Right there. So, but if I was at Betty's, it'd be the manwich. Boom.
That's right.
So, but hey, thanks guys for showing up. And as always,